I guess I should introduce myself first. My name's Phil Shih. For those of you who don't know me, I've been hanging around the hosting space for a long time, been covering the industry for about 11 years now. I recently left my previous place of employment to start up my own firm. The name is Structure Research. You can find us at structureresearch.net. I wanted to, I've got about 45 minutes today. I only want to speak for about 35 to let you guys maybe throw some questions at me and maybe have a little bit of back and forth. So my goal here is to just provide a quick overview of what I'm seeing in the marketplace, identify some trends. I'm definitely going to miss a few things, but I'll try to hit some of the high points that I think are the most important right now. Certainly not meant to be exhaustive in any way. The title of the presentation, The Future is Now, and I think you'll see this through all the slides that I present. Fundamentally, I think there's never been I've been around for a long time. I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time in this industry. I think that, it's been a slow-moving industry for much of its history. I think that changed fundamentally in 2008, 2009, not too coincidentally with the rise of Amazon. But it's opened up a huge opportunity for this sector, and I'm glad I'm still around. I'm glad I didn't leave for to sell widgets or groceries or things like that. I think technology and the cloud computing and hosting is definitely the place to be. I'm not going to kill you with definitions like a lot of analysts do. I think everybody here knows what cloud computing is. Cloud computing is hosting. Cloud computing is web hosting. It's something. Cloud computing is not new. I think everybody here would agree with that. Most people here have been doing cloud computing in some form or another since probably the late 90s, mid-90s even, if you guys were really early. Cloud is hosting, hosting is cloud. Fundamentally, the only difference is, cloud computing is hosting. It's just done in a slightly different way. It's still a server hosted in a in a data center managed by a third party. It's still consumed. The customer does not buy or own the hardware. They consume it as a service. What changed with cloud is the payment model shifted, and with virtualization, of course, there is more. You're not dealing with a physical box, you're dealing with a virtual server that affords you a certain amount of flexibility, agility, speed, scalability, up and down. So cloud to me is exactly that, what I kind of vaguely described. I think that's cloud. It's definitely not what all these other things that have been lumped in with it, software as a service, email. Really, these are hosted services, and that's what cloud computing is. So again, cloud is hosting, hosting is cloud. I don't think anything is really that new. So I think the best, obviously, you want to know, you've come here, you have a good feeling about the sector. You want to know, where are we right now? I think that some of these numbers give you an indication. I think obviously the best place to start are the public companies. And they obviously disclose numbers that give us insight. I think you'll see, at least with this snapshot, which is meant to be global, I think the growth rates, you see that they seem to bunch around the high teens and low 20s. The IOMART number there, 32.4% is less. The other numbers are organic. Those are boosted a bit by acquisition. But you'll notice that Rackspace has done exceedingly well, seems to be still, even at its scale, performing above its peer group, which is quite remarkable, growing at about 30%. If you go to the right, those are not EBITDA margin numbers, it's EBITDA growth on a year-over-year basis. And if my math is correct, I think you'll see that 30% growth EBITDA. I think what's striking is that if you look at a lot of the private and public companies, EBITDA growth on a year-over-year basis seems to be in line with or exceed top-line revenue growth, and I think that's a good indication that the business is scaling and that companies are realizing the economies of scale in the model, and I think that is a positive indicator. Colocation, I think you see the same pattern, high teens, low 20s in terms of revenue growth. These are total company numbers, so companies like Savvis and Terramark have hosting and colocation mixed in with those. And again, the same pattern, I think, EBITDA growth on a year-over-year basis. Again, scale, economies of scale in the model seem to be driving through to the bottom line. And again, that's a positive indicator. Wholesale Colocation, these numbers are, my slide deck is updated from first quarter of this year. Those numbers seem a bit low, and I think that may be some seasonality in that the last 2 or 3 quarters of last year, the revenue growth on a year-over-year basis was higher, high teens, low 20s. Private companies driving a lot of value in this sector. Certainly some of the most exciting firms I find in the managed hosting and cloud space are privately held. This is just a snapshot, and as you can see, definitely 20% seems to be where a lot of these companies are. 25% for some of the ones that are growing a bit faster. You'll notice that these are, generally speaking, more companies have been around for a while. There are a lot of smaller firms like a Single Hop, like a Firehost, who have been around maybe a shorter period of time, but are growing at rates much higher than this. So, they'll show anywhere from 40 to 70% year over year. Again, and they're coming from a smaller base, but it again speaks to the growth that's happening at larger established companies like a SoftLayer, mid-sized companies who've been around a while, and even smaller startups. Everybody's growing at some pace or another. EBITDA, I don't have anything I can disclose or share with you publicly, but I think it's fair to say if your company's EBITDA margin is in the 30% range, you're starting to do well. 40% seems to be a marker. I've seen 40s, even 50 in some cases. SoftLayer, but pre-merger. Word on the street has it Q9 was over 40 as well, or closer to 50 when they were acquired. This is a first quarter snapshot. It's different from the previous slides in that it breaks out just the hosting segment revenue. So as you can see again, Rackspace's two sub-segments within their hosting numbers are, as you can see, quite stark in difference. The cloud business seems to be driving a lot of their growth, 70% plus, whereas the traditional kind of the intensive hosting, traditional Rackspace manage is still down kind of where the rest of the market is in the 20s. So definitely being propelled by cloud. You'll notice as well for companies like a Savis or an Internap, or Internap maybe is the best example, the hosting growth there is much strong. Hosting is actually driving most of the company's growth versus colocation and bandwidth services. So again, kind of the same dynamic with Rackspace and cloud you see with some companies and managed hosting. Pure One would be another good example. Pure One is also growing faster in hosting than in colocation. And I think this is a pattern you'll see across the industry. I'm still working on a, quick commercial, I'm still working on market share database. I don't have any total market size revenue numbers for you. However, this is my quick take. I've been out talking to providers and trying to get a sense of where the growth rate is. This is roughly where I think the market is right now. You'll notice that colocation, I think, is should be in that range. I think that hosting, it's maybe useful to think of two segments within the hosting market: the hosting, managed hosting, and then kind of more shared hosting, virtual servers, mass market hosting, email as well. I think that the growth rates in those portions of the market differ somewhat. So I think 2020, mid to high 20s for managed hosting, driven particularly well by growth in international markets. I've seen a lot of activity in Asia, spent some time there last year. Definitely an emerging market that's driving some of the global growth rates. Mass market shared hosting, probably slower growth rates, somewhere around 10 to 13 from what I've seen so far. Cloud, really hard to give you some. I believe 40 to 50% could be conservative. It could be very conservative given what you see with the discussion about Amazon's numbers, which seem to have pushed 1 billion, as well as some of the smaller providers out there in the market. Again, like a Firehost who's doing cloud, like some of the on-app companies that are growing very quickly with this new segment. So just to sum up some of the growth and the patterns I'm seeing in growth, I think again, the mix, I already talked quickly about this. I think that if you take a company like Via West and Peak 10, who have traditionally been colo providers, they now have full managed hosting portfolios. And if you talk to them and ask them how their growth is, they'll definitely say that they're growing faster in managed hosting, a little slower in colocation. That's partially a function of the nature of the business. It's easier to sell hosting. It's quicker to on-ramp them and get them on board. And there's more upside. But nevertheless, the demand for outsourced hosting, for managed services is definitely there. Sorry, the clock didn't move, so I'm going to peek at my watch every so once in a while. Cloud, again, is the same thing with cloud and host companies that are not in the colo business doing hosting and cloud. Cloud is obviously growing faster than hosting. I haven't seen anything that tells me that the mix of cloud in a total hosting revenue bucket is outside of the 1 to 10% range. I'd say most companies are 1 to 5, with exception, of course, to the new pure plays that just do cloud. Rackspace would be on the top end. I think if you do the math with their numbers, it's 8 to 10%. You want to strip out email, SharePoint, a few things like that, you're probably 6 to 8. So let's say 7.5, just as a rough guideline. I think one of the things about growth that I've seen over the last few years, in particular, since of course the economic downturn, is that ARPU continues to grow. So if you actually, again, Rackspace, great public company, gives us a lot of information. If you dig into the numbers, you will see that total customer growth, or total units, has been relatively flat in some quarters. But the revenue still grows, as the previous slide, 22% on a year-over-year basis, 5 to 7 quarter-over-quarter, which tells me that existing customers are not just stable, but they're growing. So they didn't move, they didn't leave, they're buying new services, they're expanding their infrastructure, maybe they're moving another application into your data center. So ARPU growth is definitely a key driver, and I think it's had an offsetting effect. I strongly believe that it's kind of offset some of the negatives, or the negative impact of the recession and the economic downturn. Obviously, less small businesses growing, less small businesses expanding, but I think that you see steady growth across the sector. The numbers I identified, 20s, because ARPU growth, existing customers continue to grow, they continue to use the outsourced hosting model. So I think just at a very high level, where are we? I still, go ahead.
The previous slide, ARPU, I don't know what
average revenue per user or unit. Yeah, no problem. Where was I? Status, right? Just at a very high level, in terms of where we are in the sector right now, I think the worst. I don't think it's a secret. I think the worst is behind us. I think we're past the bottom. We might be a year or so, year and a half past the bottom. Again, some of the public companies we've seen, like Rackspace, seem to have, kind of troughed. They hit their bottom in about 2010, 11, and now seem to be on the way up. And I think that pattern holds in general for much of the hosting space. But the rebound, as you've experienced, I think as you've seen if you follow the sector, that it's been relatively weak. It's been patchy, or there's been hits and misses, good quarter, bad quarter. But I do believe that I think it's almost over. I don't think it's a recurring pattern. I think that with a improved macroeconomic environment, I think that despite the kind of the standalone effects, or the stability inherent to this model, inherent to the industry, will be pushed by some improvement in the economic environment, particularly for those of you who are more exposed to small businesses or micro business or small home offices, consumers even. So definitely I think they're encouraging signs. I don't want to be too optimistic, but I think that we could be headed into, once things turn around, I think we could be ready for better times. All that talk, I actually think that there is some irony in the fact that the recession was a good thing in many ways for this sector, maybe not so much for other sectors, but for this sector, hosting has helped in many ways, and as well the cloud computing hype and the buzzword has kind of opened a lot of people's eyes. When things are bad, they're going to look for ways to save money, how to be efficient. How can I, do things in a cheaper and more optimal fashion. Hosting, the model, you've been selling it for years. I mean, that's essentially your pitch. So it's created a lot of interest, I think. The recession was obviously bad for small business growth, but there's been, a lot more interest in the sector. And I'll just give you one example. I talked to this New York-based managed hoster, having a pretty tough time during the 2008, 2010 period, but that started to change, but in that time, said, gee, I've never had so many, conversations from, CIOs who are completely new and just knocked on the door and said, give me some cloud. What is this cloud thing? I want some cloud. That may not be useful to you, but it's an expression of interest in a model, and it's an opportunity to explain the sector's value proposition. So I think that's been great for the sector. It's happened not just at that company, but many companies I've spoken to in the last year, or in the last few years for that matter. So definitely, again, recession, desire to save, reluctance to outlay huge sums of capital. You've seen this in the data center space. Nobody's building data centers. They're increasingly looking to outsource. They don't want, there's just not the right type of environment for building, but outsourcing, definitely. So again, I think that's, again, to take it to another level, I think the sector is actually, I think has entered a period where there is a perfect storm emerging. Now other analysts have said this too, they stole it from me, don't believe them. I believe the sector is at a fundamental turning point and crossroads where a number of very positive variables with a net positive impact on the sector are going to help this sector continue growing. I think that there's definitely lots of runway left on this. There's lots of runway left. I talked about the cloud hype starting conversations. I talk about the desire to be more efficient. The increasing complexity of IT infrastructure is a big one. I think, generally speaking, there is an IT refresh cycle coming. There's a need for compliance. That begets more interest in expertise. More expertise means you need to look at specialized providers. Specialized providers are generally in this room today. So, call me bullish or call me a little rosy or naive, but I do think that the sector is definitely headed for a very good period. So again, this is probably a little repetitive, but I do believe the core fundamentals of the sector persist. Mission critical applications, I think, have proved, we've talked about it for years, they don't move. They stay when you get them, you host them, you got to really mess up to lose your customer. I think the last 2, 3, 4 years was evidence of that, and I'm sure you guys have seen that with your customer base. So that should be no secret to any of you. I'm going to look at my watch again. Okay, making good time. Just to underscore some of these points, it's a fundamental problem now that we see in IT, and I think it's just even more pronounced today in the marketplace. Again, IT budgets are tight, IT staff are overworked, there's more things, infrastructure is not easy, but it's never been more important to businesses, and people continue to move applications and content and campaigns into a hosted environment. One great way to solve this problem, of course, is to lessen the burden on IT, get it done right, take advantage of specialization and scale. One way to do that, of course, is to outsource. So why the hoster? A lot of people, and I know you guys try to answer this question every day when you deal with your customers. These are some of the things I think that's great about hosting. Hosters are agnostic. They can consider best of breed technology, any kind of technology they want. They can deliver different, you can deliver 2 types of email. You can deliver Microsoft Exchange. You can partner with Open Exchange and deliver them off the same platform. Best of breed solutions for your customers. Specialization, because you're focused on infrastructure, I think hosting companies create some very good and effective tools and management platforms that in-house IT has difficulty matching. Especially when you go down the market into the kind of lower, where a company does not have the scale and resources to build like some of the bigger companies out there. So definitely, hosting providers provide choice, and there's no, of course, one of the great things about this model again is, the IT refresh cycle is simply, in the hosted model does not happen. So I just draw, I draw this up for some people, some of my clients, just as a discussion point. It's not meant to be completely accurate, but this is an exchange, an exchange server. What it would cost roughly to deploy this on an annual basis for 5 users. Anyway, 5 digits in a hosted model for 5 users. Let's just say significantly less. Again, no secret to you guys, but I think this kind of I want to use this just to hit hard at the point that the hosted model, I think, is absolutely powerful and compelling. I'll probably talked a lot about this, but again, I think the one key takeaway here is that, I really do think, I talked about the perfect storm, but I think things are fun, there's a new normal out there. I don't think these things are going to change. I think IT is there's a desire to be more effective, more efficient, and I don't think we're going to go back to the old days. I think if anything, it's going to keep moving in that direction. So there is going to definitely be a need for help, for specialization, for tools, to take advantage of scale, all to drive down costs, but not just costs, efficiency with efficiency with the services you deliver. So for those of you who've been in the hosting space a long time, you probably remember the days when you were competing against hosters, just hosters, you know. I'm a hoster, B hoster, I'm better than them, I'm better than that hoster, or I can give you, you know, more bandwidth, I can give you a better price, I give you better support and services. This was generally the battleground that you faced. That's changed. That's definitely no longer the case. The competitive landscape is highly populated now. There is definitely competition coming from all directions. Most notably, a bookstore decided to get into this business and impact the space in a way I don't think any of us could have foresaw, you know, in 2005 even. But they're not the only ones. I think, you know, a hardware provider like Dell, which many of you partner with, you know, I don't think, if you look at their acquisitions, I don't think it's any secret, and with the data center infrastructure built out across the world, I don't think it's, I think it's a foregone conclusion they're going to move into services, potentially hosting in what shape or form, probably not clear, but you know, if you follow what they've been doing, it's clear that they're going to be a competitor. A lot of activity, Windows Azure last week at WPC, well, first they announced kind of an upgrade in June, now announced it again at WPC for hosters, but definitely Windows Azure, the takeaway, becoming, you know, they've done a lot of work, and frankly I thought it was pretty impressive. They've definitely turned it into something that can be used in the retail, you know, that they can deliver as a retail service to the market. So definitely somebody to watch for. Another large-scale provider, of course, is Google. Google again, recently in the last 4 weeks with launched Compute Engine, and I think the long-awaited battle between Amazon, Azure, Google, and possibly Facebook in cloud, kind of the raw infrastructure as a service market is definitely picking up a bit. Probably have to talk about Facebook a bit, mostly for you guys who are in the shared hosting business. You know, Facebook definitely has you know, at some point become, I think a few years ago, it became an alternative to some of the blog hosting, personal website hosting, these kinds of kind of individual consumer level hosting. And I think, yes, I think long term it'll probably sweep away part of this market. Their presence, I think, for any of you guys in the shared hosting business or serve a lot of small business customers, I think it'll inevitably push a lot of you a little more up market. Best Buy is a great place to buy a TV and some consumer electronics, but you know, they bought a company in this market in Boston, so you know, they're looking at supporting IT for small businesses through their retail outlets. Again, something that overlaps with your sector. Intuit, same thing. They bought a hosting company 5 years ago. A lot of people still don't realize that, but they've built out a kind of a website hosting platform, again, targeted at small businesses. I guess the only other person to mention there, I mean, the telco interest in the sector I don't think is a secret, so I won't belabor the point, but suffice to say that there is plenty of interest in what, you know, outsourced hosting can do, not just as a standalone offering or infrastructure service, but how it can fit in a portfolio. And I think that's what's driven most of the telcos into this sector, which is, you know, declining legacy base or revenue base or service base, and an interest in targeting growth markets. No surprise that they identified hosting service, infrastructure services, and then decided to spend quite a bit of money bringing those capabilities in-house. Having said all that about the competitive landscape, I still think the main competition does not come from the previous slide. The main competition you face every day, and I think most of you would agree, comes from in-house IT. It's still very much the game, I think still, while it's obviously important to think about what's going on in the market and where all the new competitive dynamics, competition is still the same as it was 10 years ago in the sense that you are still dealing with, you know, insourcing. That is your fundamental battle is trying to convince the IT buyer, the CIO, the CTO, what you can do to help him be more efficient, what you could, you know, move into an outsourced environment rather than do in-house at a cost or an efficiency rate that, you know, may not be completely optimal. And look at my watch again. The clock is still on. Okay. So just quick run through some of the trends that I've been seeing, certainly not exhaustive. There are lots of things. If there's anything about this sector I've always found fascinating is that there are many moving parts. I think the difference between today and maybe 5 years ago or 7 years ago is that the moving parts are moving faster now. So I think that you're in running your business, you definitely need to react faster. I think trends change more quickly. I don't think we saw this in the early days of the sector. Colocation, we won't spend too much time. I mean, some of the slowdown that we saw with the economic downturn, inventory and capacity was less available. I think that's basically changed now. I think the other things that just to keep in mind are that power densities are rising, facilities and inventory is coming to the market faster. And the other thing about colocation, of course, which I think is no secret, is that more people here are using it. It's definitely been a big driver of colocation has been coming from hosting companies. I think still that there are a lot of trends in hosting. I think that the common denominator is automation still, and it's not, automation has, I think, been taken to another level over the last 5 years. Automation, I think, back in the day was about being more efficient, driving the manual processes out of your operation, out of your business, out of your service delivery platform. Automation now, I think you see, plays itself out in the portal. The portal, which has now become, for many companies, and even companies that are very hands-on, like a Rackspace, the portal is now kind of your window to the customer, your customer interaction environment. It is where the place that the customer goes and interacts with your services. In many cases, it's where they judge your service based on the portal experience. They come every day. I just spoke with a hoster last week. Not a question I've always asked, but a great one that I probably should have asked. How many times do your customers visit your portal? And the answer was 9 times in a week. I would reckon the number is higher at other hosters. But that just gives you a sense of, yes, it's a daily thing. They come in every day. They may not be doing anything with their infrastructure, but they're coming in, maybe checking out the graphs and the monitors and whatever. Maybe they're thinking about buying a new service, buying more space for their, scaling their server, buying more backup, whatever that may be. The portal, that is where, and again, portal is built on automation. So I think this is what's happened. We've seen is that automation has driven a lot of the innovation in the industry. The portal is just one place that you've seen it. A byproduct of that is, of course, what I call the unified delivery platform. And I think, I think Software was a very early innovator in this. What they did was they concentrated on building a single portal that, on top of a unified delivery platform, a platform that could deliver multiple services, not just dedicated servers, which, of course, the business was built on, but cloud servers, virtual servers, private cloud environments. The core being that it's a single user experience, it's a single API, it's a single interface, it's a single relationship with a single provider. And again, that is not just about, the great thing about that is not just about efficiency for the provider, it's just an easier way to deliver services, but it's also, great, it translates into experience. So there are two sides, I think, of the coin to automation, which is, the good for the service provider and the good for the customer. It's a win-win. So definitely, this industry, if you're not automating, you're falling behind. Hybrid is again another byproduct of automation and the efficiency and the delivery. With a unified delivery platform, you are able to do some pretty interesting things, in an environment. And hybrid environments is one thing I think is starting to pick up. And on-demand procurement again. With automation, with the portal, it's an easy, a very simple procurement or purchasing process. Again, win-win situation, as I said, with automation. It's great for the customer because it's a simple way to get infrastructure. They want it now. All they have to do is pull out their credit card and buy. It's great for the provider. No exhaustive marketing and sales process and on-ramp process. It's just a quick, efficient sales process, on-ramp. So no secret that the companies that are good at this have I have found the companies that are good at this, of course, have the stronger bottom lines and have the stronger EBITDA margins, the stronger bottom lines, and as well they also have, and I think it's important to note, they have the stronger ARPU growth. Because of their experience that they've delivered to customers, they have been able to grow, just simply because it's so easy to grow. Whereas you can imagine with a more manual process of onboarding and or selling, it'd be much more difficult. Just some quick, I mean, there's so much happening in cloud. I mean, you couldn't possibly sift through it or do justice to it in just a few minutes. But these are some of the things, just high points I think I've been seeing, which I think have persisted for a little while in the marketplace. It's still, I think there's just a slow shift to seeing kind of more mission critical applications move to the cloud. It's still very much test and dev environments, storage, short-term hosting requirements. Not a rule, but as a general pattern in the type of user that goes to cloud, just starting to happen. I know, again, some of the companies I speak to who are especially some of these new cloud startups, the new pure plays, which I think is a very interesting development. Speaking to the growth in the market, I don't think Amazon's rolling over the market. If you look at these startups or young companies like Tier 3 at Jubio and Firehost and others who have really done been growing very quickly because they've been able to convince people to get onto the cloud and do a few things more than just test dev and basic storage. So definitely, I've certainly omitted many other companies, but I'm talking fast here. I think the other thing I've noticed with the cloud is what I call graduation day, and I think that you've probably seen this in your business. There are companies now, and I think it's really important, they are winning customers from Amazon. Now, the reasons for why people move from Amazon to a hosted cloud are numerous, but I think it's notable that they come for maybe two reasons we'll quickly talk about. One, they want more support, or they've had a bad support experience at Amazon, or they've suffered outages, or not that Amazon is the only data center that's ever gone down, but they've had a bad customer experience, or maybe just one that was inadequate, or they just needed something, not to say anything bad about the Amazon experience, they needed something better. They needed something maybe like fanatical. Maybe they needed rack space, or maybe they needed more tools. Maybe they wanted they liked, say, somebody else's control panel experience. But they made the decision to say, you know what, Amazon doesn't fit what I'm doing, but this does. And I think that's the core of the business right now, really. It's about fitting requirements with, and user preferences and requirements, and tailoring your services, your technology, and your portal experience, your user experience to the customer. So, quick look at making good time. The INET folks who are nice enough to let me speak here, they wanted at least to wanted me to at least just give a few, suggestions and tips on how you can improve your business. I think that's, really some of these, if you've seen me speak before, I've gone through. But, I think that the mid-market, the mid-market, broadly defined, I think is still your sweet spot. I think it's a faster sales process. It's a faster decision-making process on the customer side. I think the consumer, just broadly speaking, the enterprise market is just too. I think it's too much of a gamble and too much of a drain on resources for companies of this size. Similarly, I think on the bottom part of the market, if you're playing there, you're probably advised to start moving up as some of these kind of large-scale platforms get into this space. Differentiation, I think, clearly I've talked about differentiation is going to be key. I think, a lot of people ask guys like me, what do you think, it's not easy to market this stuff. I mean, this stuff is boring, right? It's infrastructure. It's stuff that hums in a data center with all these generators. You don't see it. It's boring. So it's tough to market. So anybody here who's a VP of marketing, director of marketing, knows this challenge. Stare at the mirror every day. How the heck do I market this stuff? True. It's very difficult. I think that one of the things that probably on the next slide, I think, let's start here. But I think you have to think a bit, it's hard to think outside the box, but I think you still have to. I think you have to get that self mindset. You have to take that out. I think that it's about engaging and educating. It's demonstrating value. I think if you're trying to sell somebody, like actually sell them, I think you're you're at a disadvantage from the start. One guy told me, I was selling this hosting stuff all day. It's like selling religion. I actually think that was pretty apt. I mean, it is some ways in that, similar to that. But that's the mindset I think you have to have. I think you have to come from the perspective that, listen, I'm going to educate you, not to be condescending, but I'm going to demonstrate a value proposition that I think makes sense for your business, will improve your business and make you more efficient, profitable, happier IT workers, happier company, and everybody wins. Let me go back here. I think that a lot of this business is driven through online marketing, but it's also extremely difficult to get, it's not a feet on the street type of business. So I think it's important to target strategic places where you can find buyers. You're not going to find buyers here at HostingCon, but you're going to find them at tech startup incubators. You're going to, wherever startups converge, generally a good place to go. I think it's still important to come here and talk about the industry with your peers and some of the great vendors that are out there. But if you go to like some of those startup events, I think, TechCrunch is, I don't follow that closely, but TechCrunch is a place where they're just startups crawling the place. Those are all potential customers. Local business is another one. If you're trying to sell to the IT buyer and IT department, try to sell them this religion, sell them this outsourced model, you've got to find where they hang out, or you've got to create environments for them. But to get those kinds of people into an environment talking about this stuff, I think is key. There are going to be a lot of vendors out there trying to sell you stuff. I think you do have to build your portfolio, expand your portfolio, but don't just add everything and hope it sticks. You throw it against the wall, have it stick. Think about your customer. Think about where you do well. Poll your customers and figure out which products fit with that audience. If there's no sense in building an enterprise cloud at a huge expense, dropping in a few V-blocks when all your buyers are small businesses and have no interest in that whatsoever. Diversify, I think. I think in the summary of my talk, I wanted to talk a bit about the global opportunity. I think, just to make the quick point, I think that mostly everybody in here has a cloud strategy or is contemplating one or has a cloud. I think the great thing about cloud is that there is a global opportunity. Just because it's so simple to deploy, you can literally move around the world so quickly. You've seen tons of cloud providers do this. Some of the UK2 has how many cloud nodes around the world now? I'm based in Toronto, and there's a ton of activity with North American cloud providers building out small presences in Toronto for the jurisdictional differences. I think that's just a good example of how quick you can move in this space. But think globally. Your end users, it's not just your business, it is your customers who think globally now. They have global audiences, global users. You will have to as well, and your infrastructure will have to move with it. So wrapping it up, making good time. I got about 5 minutes. I think no secret that I think the sector is doing well. If you've been paying attention, which I know some of you have, over the last couple of years, valuations have been climbing. In some cases, 11, the top end, 18 times, trailing 12-month EBITDA. Maybe not, I don't think maybe not a lot of us here would expect that, but definitely the larger trend is upwards. That's the takeaway. I wouldn't suspect if you put your company on the market that you'd get at the top end of that range. But there's never been more interest in the sector, and I think as an analyst that there's never been, I've never been busier the last couple of years. Again, just to kind of paint that picture again, in the early days of the sector, it was you talk to hosting companies and that was about it. But now you take calls from vendors of all shapes and sizes. Everybody wants to get into the space because everybody knows IT is going to continue to shift in this direction. It is going to continue to move from an an in-sourced on-premise environment to an outsourced data center. And just, I love just to throw that 80-20 number out there. Just it underscores the upside that's still in the industry. If you look at server shipment numbers, generally speaking, 80% of them end up in a corporate data center, in an on-premise data center. 20% of them end up in a hosted, in one of your data centers, in an outsourced, third-party operated data center. Rackspace did a survey, or looked at some data, they tell me that it's 85-15. So anyway, it sounds like this is the ballpark. So it really speaks to the upside. Just to hit home on that again, how many? What I mean by the question, how many apps? If you look at your customers, you generally host one application for them. I think most of you generally would agree with that. You'll host one or two applications for them. But if you ask some of those customers, and particularly if you move up market, if you ask that customer, how many apps do you have internally? How many, they could tell you, Rackspace, again, they gave me this data. They did a survey of some of their top customers, and it was literally, the answer was tens, dozens. Somebody said, I think I have 100. Of course, these are bigger customers, but the larger point being, people have more applications. If you go back to what I said earlier about mission-critical applications and the industry itself being extremely stable and having customers that don't move, you can imagine that your chances of getting all those other apps is extremely strong because as long as you don't really mess things up. If you build a good customer relationship, you've demonstrated the value, you can put that on paper. Your ability to, or your chances of getting some of those apps, not all of them, they may not all make sense in your cloud, in your managed hosting environment, on your dedicated server, but there has got to be other things you can get. I mean, email is just one thing that still sits to the frustration of many email providers at this conference. Email still sits, in a back office somewhere. That's something that this sector, all of that is what is addressable market for the sector. I guess one quick 2 points. We're running out of time. I think the channel, I think, is big, and I think it speaks to the opportunity. Again, I talked about how insourced IT is going to an outsourced environment. All these companies that are in the insourced business or remote management business, like systems integrators, MSPs, and these folks are saying, wow, I'm losing customers, or this is a compelling proposition. I need to get into the cloud. Of course, they don't have anything to, where do they start? They're not data center operators. They don't know how to build the systems that you've spent 10, 15 years building, or that you've partnered with a specialized vendor for. So they're now partnering with this sector. Way to get to the market quickly. So it's a great opportunity, and I think, again, more upside. I think if the sector can get our platform, the hosting platform inside, these operations, these MSPs, these SIs, I think that's, again, more kind of runway, more addressable market. So I'll leave you with the good thoughts of the perfect storm. There are macro hiccups, but I still think that the sector is doing well, will continue to do well, and if we're fortunate, there's going to be many more good years left in the sector. I timed this perfectly, so I don't know if I've got to stop on time, right at the clock. So, if you have questions, please feel free to come. I'll be here for a while, or just outside there. Please follow me on Twitter. My goal is to hit 1,000 users by the end of the year. I've got 475. I'm terrible. But please follow me on Twitter. I do a lot of tweeting. I'm trying to really engage on social media. And if you want a postcard, I've got plenty of these things that may look good on your desk. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you have a great conference.